Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us tonight on episode 12, season 2 of The Standoff with Brad and Richie here on New Zealand Sport Radio. We're here live every Wednesday on Facebook throughout the season. Good evening, Richie. Well, Magic Round has come and gone, and there's been a lot of talking points, and I can't wait to talk about it with you tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall we address the elephant in the room really early?
Yeah.
Well, let me turn it around on you. What did you make of the refereeing crackdown and the abundance of send-offs and sin bins?
I'm still on the fence. I think there was some that were valid and some that weren't. And then there was also a few that I thought were missed. But we can talk about that a bit more in our news part. So while we're here live on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m, you can also catch our show via our podcast on iHeartRadio at your convenience. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. As always, we're going to cover everything you need to know in the week that was rugby league, including our top stories of the week, a review of the Magic Round matches and our picks. We'll then stop and answer some questions from all of you before we preview the Round 11 clashes and make our picks to end the show. So tune in to get your rugby league news. Remember to send us comments and questions throughout the show. So let's get right back into that story, because that was my first news story, was the NRL bringing a new crackdown rule on contact to the head. Resulted in 14 sin bins and 3 send-offs in the round. So, yeah, I'll just flick it back to you now. I didn't answer your question, so you can answer it.
Give it back to me. 14 sin bins and 3 send-offs. That's a whole playing squad full of players. Initially, I was, and we were chatting a bit before we went on air, my response was a bit emotional, and this isn't the game that we grew up watching, kind of thing. Like a lot of pundits and fans were commenting on the weekend. The more time I give it and the more I think about it, it's one area that rugby league's a little bit behind, say, rugby union and NFL started making changes and really focusing on the concussion. So I think, by what the refs were given, a lot of them had to be sin bins. There were a couple that were, like in particular, in the Cowboys game, Lachlan Burr getting sent to the bin for hitting James Tedesco. Really didn't agree with that, because James Tedesco did his regular trick of falling to his knees right before contact. And Lachlan Burr was pretty much aiming sort of around the stomach area, but collected him in the head. And I think that's where the refs have to look at some mitigating circumstances on the field, maybe a penalty, no sin bin. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think they're. I understand what they're trying to do. It's like we said before, we went live on air. A lot of sports are trying to work with these concussions and the safety of their players. And the elephant in the room, I guess, is the NRL are trying to protect themselves from lawsuits as well, which I think is probably the bigger factor than the player safety that they're trying to push. With the amount of injuries the NRL players get, if they all decided to try to sue the NRL, they could wipe the NRL out of business. As simple as that. So I think they're trying to stop that by cracking down. And I wasn't a fan of them doing it now. I think this is probably something they should have stamped on before the season started. Like 10 weeks in, you're telling everyone we're changing the way we are playing. You're going to see what we saw this week with so many. Now that everyone knows and they've seen what the refs are going to be doing, I think we'll see it come down this week for sure. I think there'll still be a couple, because at the speed of the game, there's always going to be a couple of accidental head highs. It's just the nature of the beast. And so we'll still see a couple, I'm sure. As long as you don't get into a situation like we saw this week, where you had like 2 players from one side off at the same time, because it just takes all the contest out of the game, which I think was what disappointed me most, was some teams really going up against it. Like, you're playing a top side with 11 men, you're not in for a good night.
And we saw that in a couple of the games where, in particular, the South Sydney Cronulla game, where South Sydney got off to a fast start. Cronulla start coming back, and then they go back for a really poor penalty on Chad Townsend for a crusher, where they're trying to crack down on all of these kind of things, and he barely brushed his head, and from there, South Sydney go down the other side of the field and score and put the game to bed. And I think also when you're looking at concussion injuries, a lot of them too aren't from high tackles. A lot of them, if someone goes low and collects a hip or a knee or a two-man tackle and the defender's head clash, you know what I mean? It's not all high tackles where these concussions are coming from.
Yeah, a lot of them are coming from the actual defender themselves for putting the head in the wrong place. Which I don't know. What do you do there? Do you sin bin the guy because he had a head clash against someone's hip? I don't know what you do there. It's just it's something they're gonna need to work on. And I think we had Gavin mention in the comments. We'll put it up here. That it's all stemmed from that Eels Roosters game where they missed a couple of things and they really wanted to crack down on it. So it's very reactive. But I'm sure they're going to work. I'm sure they're going to work on it in some way. But we'll get to see that this week and see how much it actually affects the rare games this round. But we'll get on to more news. We talked about it last week, but Adam Reynolds is now officially signed with the Broncos. It's all signed and delivered for a 3-year deal. And straight after the news of him saying he's going to the Broncos actually signed Brinko Lee from the Storm as well. So like we talked last week, that when you get a top caliber player, other players will start to come. So depending on what they're going to do with Katoni Staggs, if he's going to be a centre or if he's going to go into the halves, they could get themselves quite a good little team. I think Brinko Lee and Katoni Staggs in the centres is quite dangerous. And I think Reynolds can kind of handle the fort in the halves, so you don't really need to get a marquee half to join him. It's going to be interesting to see what other players they start to get.
Yeah, nice pickups for them, eh? Reynolds obviously is a big one, and Brinko Lee is a nice sort of offset for losing Xavier Coates. Finally some good news for them, because most of the team news for the Broncos this season have been the players they've been losing. So those are two nice handy pickups that hopefully next year that those guys will come in and really help them out, because they need some help. Definitely. And next bit of news, the Warriors have all but confirmed that they're going to stay in Australia for the entire season this year. There's a bit of an asterisk on it, because what they mean is they're going to stay in Australia as a camp, but they still will most likely bring some games to Mount Smart. They'll just fly over like teams do when they come to play them here. So I think it's the right decision. They've got their families there and all the kids are in school. So it's good just to finish it out there, as long as they bring some games home. I think that's the only thing that will rub people the wrong way is if they say we're staying here and then they give Warriors fans no football here. They need to get a game at Mount Smart, even if it's just one, for the very sake of letting the fans farewell Roger in his last season with the club at Mount Smart. I think that's very important, and the atmosphere they would have at Mount Smart for the first game back would be amazing. So I'm selfish. I want to go. So the sooner they can do that, the better. But I think overall it's a wise decision to just keep the camp in Australia. It's definitely the least disruptive decision, isn't it? Like you say, some of them have kids in school, and to sort of uproot the whole team and bring them over again at the tail end of the season, it might not be logistically possible. So from a point of view where it's going to cause the least amount of disruption, it's probably the right call, as long as you get your home game, Brad. Heck, I might even fly over for that.
And I think Roger said in one of his comments in the interview, he said that a lot of the guys that are new signees don't even have houses or anything here or cars. So they would come over here and have nowhere to go. So, see it out till the end of the year. And then once the season's done, they can come back. And from next year on, we should be playing football at Mount Smart on a regular basis. And next bit of news, still going with the Warriors. Adam Pompey is going to be signing a new deal with the Warriors. He hasn't signed on the dotted line yet, but sounds like he's very interested in what they've offered, so he's going to take it. I think it's a handy player to retain for the Warriors. I am not a fan of him as a center. I think he'd be a very good winger for the Warriors. But he's been having to front up with a lot of injuries at the moment and filling in where he can. And I think he's been doing all right. What are your thoughts on them keeping Pompey?
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, it's a good depth signing. I mean, it's not like the Warriors have. Well, you've got young Rocco Berry coming through and guys like that, but like you say, with Pompey, he's been doing a pretty good job in the absence of a few guys, and when he's been called upon, he's done a solid job. I'm like you, for a centre, probably his distribution skills aren't quite top tier, but on the wing, he'd be a handy guy in your team. He never puts too much of a foot wrong. You know, he's solid enough. Generally, doesn't make too many mistakes, and he's pretty sound on defence. So, it's a good depth signing.
Yeah, and more news. We've got there will be a decision made next month on whether the World Cup's going to take place this year or not. So they might be pulling the pin on it due to COVID and everything. It's still not that great in the Northern Hemisphere. So it looks like they're doing a bit of research to see how feasible it is to keep the competition going. And fingers crossed it still goes ahead. If not, I think they'll just push it out a year. So you still get the World Cup. And if they give it another year, we can potentially convince Reece Walsh to be a Kiwi. So that's probably better for us anyway. We'll get him in. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Do you think they're going to go ahead with the World Cup, or?
It's a touch and go one, like you say. It's COVID's still causing some problems over that side of the world. So if we get a World Cup, that's great. If we do, though, I'm not so sure they'd have full crowds. If you push it out, maybe that heightens the chance of getting a full participation. But yeah, it's touch and go, isn't it?
Yeah, and see Simons just commented saying he thinks the World Cup's going to go ahead because the UK government's put so much money into it. I think money's going to do a lot of the talking as well. As he said, they've already invested so much. We've come a long way with the COVID stuff, so I think they'll have procedures in place where it would be basically just a bubble if it's at the end of the year, if it is still as bad as it is. So I think they can still make it work. But yeah, I'll keep an eye on that, and we'll hopefully have more news on that in the upcoming weeks. But then we'll go into expansion team talk. We've got the Brisbane Firehawks have officially launched a bid to become the NRL's 17th team. That was one of the ones rumoured. I know the Redcliffe Dolphins are still very interested as well. And there's also been a $30 million bid launched for a second New Zealand team based in Wellington. I think it's called the Southern Orcas. I think they were, yeah. So it's interesting to see. I'm not really sure what they're looking for the Brisbane team, because the Dolphins already have a stadium and everything, so they've got a lot of the groundwork already done. Where I think any of these other teams, if they're going to have their own stadium or if they're also going to play at Suncorp like the Broncos, I'm not sure. But yeah, have you heard any news on the expansion teams?
Just the same as what you've heard and what you've said there, Brad. A Brisbane franchise seems a given, and it seems like the NRL are keen on getting an extra Brisbane team. So Firehawks could be what we see. Southern Orcas, that'd be cool. I get to see some rugby league here in Wellington, although I wouldn't switch allegiance. But yeah, I think initially Brisbane is a pretty strong possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I know Simon's put here that he's not a fan of Andrew Chalmers, who's investing in the team as he's got a bad reputation with the Bradford Bulls. I think that's with the Wellington team, correct, Simon? Or have I got it mixed up? But yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm still not sold on them having a second team in Brisbane. I still think they could have had it somewhere else. I feel like it's only gaining traction because the Broncos have been so piss poor, and they just want to get an easy fix. I know they talk about like they want to really Brisbane's such a big league place for them, but I think there's other markets they could have tried to go to first. I know I like the idea of Perth, but I think the Perth one has the issue of travel.
Yeah.
So I think that's taken the sting out of it. But yeah, I suppose it just helps balance it out because there's so many Sydney teams. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. It always gets a bit more exciting when there is a new team coming. I remember when the Titans started, there was all the buzz around it about like the marquee players they were signing and just having a fresh team in there that you've never seen before. So I'll look forward to when it happens.
Yeah, well, it could go a couple of ways. I mean, we see like in the Super League days where they brought all the extra team, the South Queensland teams and things like that, and then not so long after they canned them all. And even looking cross-code Super Rugby with your Sunwolves and teams like that, you know, as long as they throw some good resource behind those teams and they can get some decent enough roster signings so they're not getting smashed by 50 points every week, because then no one will get behind that.
Yeah, and so Simon said I was correct that it was the Wellington team Chalmers is involved with, and he said Brisbane makes sense, but preferences for Perth and Adelaide. Yeah, I think Peter V'landys has made a habit of coming out and challenging the AFL in interviews, but he doesn't want to go into the markets where they're strong. So I don't know if that's a wise business decision from him or if he's scared that the NRL won't be able to compete with the AFL in Adelaide and the likes. I think Adelaide would be a great place to have a team. But yeah, I think they're going with the safe option of another team in Brisbane.
Guaranteed money.
Yeah, and it's just really what happens with your fan base there. It's the same as the Wellington team here. Is it just going to be former Warriors fans that jump ship? Will it be Broncos fans that decide they want to give up on the Broncos and go to another team? That's kind of the struggle you have when you're bringing another team into that market when there's already a team established. But it'll be interesting times ahead. And before we go into our review, we've got one bit of news left. And Gavin Gould actually tried to beat us to the punch, but Gerard Beale has come out of retirement to join the Dragons. He's actually named in their extended bench for this week. What are your thoughts? on the former Warrior coming out of retirement to come back and play?
Well, it's probably flat out of necessity for the Dragons because they've got a lot of cattle down at the moment. And, Gerard Beale is one of those sort of guys where you'd use to plug a hole. So, he's a solid player. He's not going to set the world on fire, probably hence the laughing emoji that Gavin used. They need somebody. So I'm not sure what his fitness levels are like right now. I'm not sure if he's been playing any lower grades. Do you know, Brad?
He's been playing in the I don't want to make it sound like I'm wrong, but like the Queensland Cup or like that level he's been playing. So he basically, as soon as he left the Warriors, he had retired, but he was going to continue playing because he said he loved to play. Yeah. So I don't mind him. I kind of had a love-hate relationship with him when he was a Warrior. I remember him doing great things when he was in the Sharks and playing for the Kiwis, and then I felt like some of that kind of disappeared when he joined the Warriors. But I think he wasn't helped by Cooney moving him around all the time. Like one week he'd be centre, next week he'd be a winger. And I think he's not a guy that's going to set your team on fire, but he can fill the gaps, which is what the Dragons need right now with half their team suspended or injured. Yeah,
exactly right, mate.
All right, so that was all the news we had there. If there's any more news that pops up while we're on, we'll stop and talk about it. But we may as well get into our Magic Round review, starting with the first game on Friday, with the Tigers defeating the Knights 36-18. This is a game we both got wrong in our picks, but we knew we were probably wrong once we heard that Kalen Ponga wasn't going to be playing. As soon as we heard that, we're like, oh, the Tigers will have a shot here. And I think they played quite well. They came out firing. They scored 3 tries in the first 14 minutes. And then the first sin bin of the round happened with Tex Hoy going off for the Knights. And it just allowed the Tigers to control the game. They were up 24-4 at the break. And the Knights came back in the second half, showing a little bit of fight, but it was just a bit too little too late. What do you think of the game?
Yeah, well, look, going into doing our tips last week, I thought this was a very tight one to tip. And then we heard the news on Ponga, and I thought, once I heard Ponga was going to be out, I thought the Tigers are very good value here. And then, early on, they skipped out to a decent lead, and you thought, the Knights without Ponga and Pearce, or already without Pearce, they lack a lot of threat. So, and the Tigers have been, they've been really bad this year, but then they've had their games where they've turned up and actually gone not so bad as well. So that was the Tigers that turned up this week, and they took advantage of Ponga-less Knights. What do you think of the game?
Yeah, I think the Tigers, they haven't been great this year, but week in, week out, they show heart. So they're always fighting and trying to stay competitive, which I think is really good if your team's struggling. If you as a fan can see that even though your team's struggling, they are putting an effort in. I think that bodes well, and they're no chance of making playoffs, but I think they've still got a few more upsets up their sleeves, just hopefully not this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully not. They've been a bit up and down, like we have. So hopefully they've got their win out of the way this weekend, and then the weekend coming now, they'll have their bad game, and we can roll over the top of them.
Yeah. And like you said, the Knights just have no attacking threat without Ponga and Pearce. All they've really got right now is Jaden Brayley, and he's trying. He's quite a handy little hooker, but I think they'll just be counting down till Ponga's back.
Yeah, absolutely. They will.
Next game, not really much to talk about in this one. The last Friday night game, Seagulls defeated the Broncos 50-6. Manly just continue this newfound form. and Broncos for some reason have gone back to their old form. So it's kind of the opposites here, and I think, yeah, I don't know what the Broncos can do to get better. I really don't. They've got some good players there. They got a few injuries and whatnot, but they have a team that shouldn't get beaten by this many points. I just don't know if it's a mental thing or not. What do you reckon?
Well, they've got this in them, you know. They've got games where they show up like they did against the Titans, and they went behind, but they scorched back. Against the Panthers, the top team, they held strong and weren't far from springing an upset. But then they'll turn up the next week and get flogged by a huge score. And this was one of those games. Maybe what they can do to get better is fast forward to next year when they've got Adam Reynolds and Brenko Lee. But this was the game that sort of started the, you know, there was a couple of binnings in this game, and this really started the traction of people worried about what was going to unfold with the referees. So what did you make of those ones? Because we had Tyson Gamble with a high tackle and
Jordan
Ricky with the headbutt. What did you think?
So the headbutt, I think, was a bit soft. But by the letter of the new rules, the refs had the right to do what they did. Tyson Gamble's one I thought was a bit harsh as well. But even if they weren't reduced to 11 men, they still weren't going to be getting out of this one. I think the Seagulls are just too strong. And Tommy Turbo's been playing as good as I've seen him play in years. And the key is keeping him healthy. If they can continue to wrap him in bubble wrap and make sure he doesn't get hurt out there, they'll continue to be a threat. They're finally into the 8 now. And, if he stays healthy, they won't be leaving, that's for sure.
Yeah, looks like we've got a viewer from Brisbane as well. Hi, Jermaine. Not sure if you're a Broncos supporter. What did you make of the put in the comments what you thought of those sin binnings?
But I just don't know what they're going to do to get better. It could be they might be, like you said, like the Bulldogs, where they're just already focusing on next year, and hoping for the best and just hoping to weather the storm while they're here now.
Yeah.
So we'll go into what was my most disappointing game of the round. The first game on Saturday with the Raiders defeating the Bulldogs 20-18. I think both sides struggled on attack. They both looked woeful. They couldn't really get anything together. The Raiders did get out to an 8-0 lead at halftime. And then we had the Bulldogs scored a couple of tries, and then we had the sin binning of Jack Whiten and the red card for Josh Papali'i. And this is where I thought the Bulldogs were actually going to get here and twist the knife for Raiders fans. But the Raiders, to their credit, managed to hang on, even though they were disadvantaged with players on the pitch. But I don't think anyone would have been happy at the end of that game. I think the Raiders would have been disappointed in how they performed. To beat the Bulldogs by 2 when you're meant to be a genuine potential grand finalist team is just not good. And Ricky Stewart, I feel for him. He's probably going to have a heart attack with what this team's doing to him. And the Bulldogs, I don't know how they let a game slip when they were playing a team without a full squad. What do you reckon?
Well, the Bulldogs letting that game slip despite, having a numerical advantage. I think losing becomes a habit, and the Bulldogs have had that habit for this year, last year. So for the Raiders, though, when they went into the break with an 8-0 lead, I've got a few friends who are Raiders supporters, and we were exchanging messages, and they're saying, I think we're going to lose this one. And that just says the amount of confidence that Raiders fans have with their team at the moment. And it nearly unfolded that way, and they're going to be a tough tip for the rest of the year, because I think if that was any other side other than the Bulldogs, they would have got the Raiders there. But let's look at the sin binnings, and in particular the Papali'i one, because that was a proper send-off. What do you think? Fair? Because he did shoulder him in the head.
Yeah, I think that one was fair. I think before this week, that probably would have been a sin bin, not a red card. Or that he might have only even been put on report with how they used to do things. But with the new stance, yeah, he contacted the head with the shoulder. Obviously, I don't think he tried to do it completely on purpose, but yeah, it was valid. And the Jack Whiten one, I think, was a bit soft, but I'll give them it. I'm not a Raiders fan, so I can be one-eyed here and go, it's not my problem. What did you think, though? Did you think Whiten's was deserved?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I think the Papali'i one was deserved, given what we knew heading into the round, what the NRL said they instructed the referees to do. That one was the more clear-cut one of the round up until that point.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jermaine replied to you saying he's a Warriors fan.
Good man.
Yeah, and he didn't mind the crackdown on the head contact, but they did go overboard on a few of them. Yeah, I think that's it. I think some of them were valid, and some of them I think they just were a bit trigger happy on. But it's very new for the refs as well. We've got to remember this is a rule that got brought up like a couple of days before the round kicked off. So even the refs were still adjusting. So which we saw with this game, where I think Whiten's probably could have got away with it. But that takes us into the next game on Saturday with the Rabbitohs beating the Sharks 32-22. What do you think of this game? I thought the Rabbitohs were patchy, but they started to get into the groove and just went away with it towards the end.
Yeah, patchy's a good word, mate. It's not vintage Rabbitohs right now because, you know, they still look like they're lacking a couple of troops. They're missing people like Latrell Mitchell big time. So we're not seeing vintage Rabbitohs performances, but they got out to a good lead, and I thought the Sharks did really well to come back. And they looked like they were pushing very hard, and then we saw a really soft crusher penalty where I think the bunker may have tipped off the referees, and they went back a wee bit.
Well, they almost went the length of the field back.
Yeah. And that one really killed off the Sharks' momentum, and the Rabbitohs, were able to put a few more points on the board and put the game to bed. Before that point, the Rabbitohs would have been worried because the Sharks had quite a good amount of momentum. What did you think of the match?
Yeah, I think for the Sharks, I think they just lack punch up the middle, and they lack spark without Sean Johnson out there. They really missed him. And yeah, I think, like you said, Latrell Mitchell not being there for the Rabbitohs hasn't helped them, but he's back this week. So I think we'll start seeing the Rabbitohs go back to their old form, and they'll really need it for this week because they're playing the Panthers. So it's the right time to get your players back. But yeah, I think Wayne Bennett wouldn't be happy that the Rabbitohs have just allowed teams to come back into matches. It's happened a few times where disregard that whooping they got from the Storm, but in the other games they've always just left the door open a little bit for another team to come back, and they're really going to need to make sure that doesn't happen because there's some very competitive teams that will easily beat them if they give them a chance.
Yeah, I think with them that's just the people they've had missing have been in key positions, and they've had to really readjust their spine. And they've been naming Cody Walker at fullback, but what if they've got all their cattle on board and their spine intact, that's what makes them really dangerous. Yeah,
and that takes us to the last game on Saturday with the Roosters defeating the Cowboys 30-16. I think this match it looked very one-sided with the Roosters running away with 4 tries in the first half. But then the Roosters had a sin bin to Satili Tupanua. Sorry if I got your last name wrong, mate. Which let the Cowboys back into the match, and they scored 3 tries while he was off. And then the second half was really just all the Roosters again, helped in part with that Lachlan Burr sin bin, which we've already talked about, which I think was probably the most unfair sin binning of the round. I think James Tedesco has increased his value by probably another couple of mil, because he's going to guarantee you at least 1 sin bin a game with the way he runs. He loves to run and fall into tackles, so he's basically always getting hit in the head. I'm not saying he does that on purpose. It's just his running style. But yeah, if you accidentally hit him in the head, especially with it being James Tedesco, you're going to get your marching orders. So it's going to be interesting to see what players do to try to combat him. I think you're going to have to just go around and tackle him around the ankles again.
Yeah, but we've spoken about this Tedesco habit for a few weeks now. I mean, it's not the first time. He did it in the Dragons game where he got hit in the head by Pereira. He's done it in the Eels game where he got hit by Niokore. And then now this one. And this one was hands down the worst sin binning in my eyes for the round, because Lachlan Burr is aiming about stomach or rib high. And Tedesco, as he's come to the line, he's dropped and he's contacted him, but I don't see what else he could have done. It's last minute.
No.
He can't pull out. He's not aiming for the head. He's aiming around the midriff. But because Tedesco's fallen, he's collected him. And that's what we were sort of talking about with mitigating circumstances. I mean, not all of them are going to be black and white. He's made contact with the head, sure, but he definitely didn't aim that high. It's just the way it played out, and the attacker had a lot to do with that. So if you're going to still view that as contact to the head, penalty at most, not a sin bin, because that really killed off the game for the Cowboys, who were, they weren't out of the game at that point. And as soon as that happened, I think the Roosters kicked the penalty, then score in the next set or in the next couple sets, and game over.
It was game over, yeah. After that sin bin, they went in and got a few more tries, and it was over. But it was a hard-fought win, I thought, for the Roosters. We've talked about it at length, about how injury-ravaged they are. They're not the only team. There's quite a few teams that are losing key players, but you look at the players that they've lost some really good ones. I think the depth's going to continue to get tested as the season goes. And they still could fall out of the 8 like I predicted they might, but it's just so hard to bet against them. And Nigel, cheers for that. Nigel mentioned that slow motion replays don't help. That's right, yeah. When they bring it down to a frame a second type stuff, it makes all of them look bad when it's most of those tackles are like a split second decision. Slow motion never really helps tackles at the best of times.
Well, it makes it more look like you're able to pull out when you're watching it half speed, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And the Cowboys, I think they'll be disappointed at yet another loss. But I think they did show in glimpses in this match what they can offer when they're at their best. And they still have a shot of making the 8. They just got to turn those glimpses into full game efforts. And I think a lot of that's going to rest on the shoulders of Valentine Holmes and Jason Taumalolo, who I think in this game still played really well.
Yeah, Valentine Holmes has had a nice patch of form the last few weeks. And it's Taumalolo, once he gets into that sort of form, he adds so much to them. So, you wouldn't write them completely off right now. No.
And that takes us to the first game on Sunday with the Eels beating the Warriors 34-18. This was disappointing. I think it's the only way to say it. I think the Warriors had probably their worst half of football this season in that first half. they were making error upon error, and when they did manage to get hold of the ball, they were throwing it over people's heads and throwing it over the sideline, and all of that piled on top of each other just saw the Eels dominate possession and territory, and 20 minutes in, the game was basically over, if I'm brutally honest. But to their credit, this was the only game of the round without a sin bin, although there was a head high on Roger that probably should have got one if we're going by the rules that they had set in place. But for some reason, the Warriors appeared to get better in the second half when some young guy called Reece Walsh jumped on the field. The moment he came out there, they looked a lot better, and they were within a sniff of this towards the end there. It looked like they were right in it, and then it was just one more error that led to the Eels going all the way down the other end to seal the win for them. So I think it was a good performance from the Eels. I think they would be unhappy that they let the Warriors get back in. And yeah, the Warriors, they just need to stop making errors, and they need their Cody Nikorimas, those key players in the squad. They need them to step up, because to be honest, relying on an 18-year-old to get you out of the hole you've dug is not making you a playoff team.
Yeah, look, a couple things. I don't know what's happened, but we've gone from a team that was top of the league when it comes to set completion percentage. We were right at the top of the tree, and then the last couple of weeks, I don't know what's happened, but it's sort of gone out the window, and that happened in the first half, and we gave them a lead that was, what proved to be too big to run down. That's what makes it so frustrating, Brad, is by one token, we look really poor, and we've given up a huge lead, and we just look like a dog's breakfast. Then on the other hand, we put Reece Walsh on, and we come back and look like a really threatening side. And you'll get some people that say Reece Walsh is young, he's small, he can't handle a full 80 minutes. In my mind, rubbish to that. Sam Walker's playing 80 minutes for the Roosters, same age, not a huge guy. He transforms our attack, mate. We just look like we have threats left and right when he's on, and doesn't make sense to me having him warm the pine until the game's gone.
Yeah. As the cliche couch coaches that we are, I'm sure there's people that get paid money that seem to know better, but I'm seeing it from Jamie Soward, Adam Blair. People that have played the game have all come out and said that this kid needs to be starting. So if they're players of the game, I've heard some coaches come out and say that if he was in their team, he'd be starting. A lot of people still don't know where you'd put him, but as long as he's out there, if they wanted him to be playing fullback so he can learn that and throwing Roger out on the wing, that's fine, I guess. You could even put him on the wing himself, or it seems that it doesn't, wherever he was on the field, because he went into fullback in this game, it didn't affect how he was injecting himself into attack. He's just a talented kid that wants his hands on the ball. And to their credit, last week, there were a lot of times when they didn't give him the ball. They were going to Chanel or Cody, where this week, Egan and the like were making sure he got the ball. So that's good to see. It's good to see they've actually stepped in the right direction in that way. But yeah, I would prefer him to start, but as long as he's playing, I don't really care. I think he's an exciting kid to watch. And it kind of makes some of these losses not feel as bad, because you go, you can start talking about what future this club has with a player like that involved. Because he's got superstar written all over him.
Oh, he's special, mate. For me, I don't care where you put him 6, 1, 7, I think he's going to have the same impact on the game. He's going to be demanding the ball, and you'd be a fool not to give him the ball, but you're even more of a fool not to start him. But that's just me and my couch coach brain.
Yeah. And yeah, I know he's young, and there has been talk about his body being a bit beaten up, and stuff, which might be another reason for why they're deciding to minimize his starting opportunities. But I would just hopefully we see it this week, where if he is coming off the bench, he's not coming off the bench when the game's already over.
Yeah,
because they say they talk about the pressure of making him start, but I can think of no worse pressure on an 18-year-old than saying, we're in real big trouble here, mate. We need you to go out there and turn this around. That's a pressure that he doesn't deserve to be put on his shoulders. So if you're like a try behind or a try ahead or something when you bring him on, just so there's still some competition there, I think we'll see a lot more out of him. We might get to see a bit more composure. At the moment, they need to score tries quickly when he's out there, so he's kind of just trying to do everything. And I want to see, I can't really tell, but that intercept that he got when he was gone and then Gutherson caught up to him, Gutherson's not that quick. So I think from what I saw, it looked like Reese was trying to slow down so he could put someone else into a scoring position, and there was just no one else there. Because he looked, I would put money on him being quicker than Gutherson. So,
you'd think so, mate. But or it's just he's very, very quick off the mark. But also, you're a little bit slower with the ball in hand. Yeah. He looks expressed to me. Might have just been one of those things, like you say, he's trying to line up somebody else. But yeah,
which I think's been a great quality of him as well. You see so many of the superstars that try to do everything themselves, and he is doing a lot, but he's always looking to put someone else into a scoring position. He's not just trying to go and score himself every time, which I think is great as well. It's great to see that he does like to distribute the ball, which is something the Warriors have lacked from time to time. They have quite a few guys that can score you tries, but they can't pass the ball to save themselves. So it's good. Hopefully he can teach them at training, like what passing means and how to do it. And hopefully some of those centers can learn.
Yeah.
And I see Jermaine's asked a good question. I'm going to hold that question until our question section, Jermaine. So I'll keep that. That's a really good question. So we'll go into the second game on Sunday. The last two games on Sunday were kind of one-sided affairs. The Storm defeating the Dragons 44-18. Dragons didn't really have the best start. 8 minutes in, they got Josh Maguire sin-binned. And then a few minutes later, Tyrell Fuimuano got a red card. This run, I think, was a red card. He hit Ryan Pappenhausen high and a little bit late and sent him into his childhood, basically. He was unconscious and got stretchered off the field. Not great to see, especially in his first game back. So that one, Tyrell's not really a thug player, as you would call them. So I don't think it was anything too malicious. I think it was more one of the best players in the Storm is there and you've got to try to stop him. But yeah, they were on the back foot right from the get-go. And Josh Adokar continued his ways, scored a hat-trick in this game. So that makes him he's got 9 tries in 2 games now. Not too bad. It's probably going to be a shame to see all his try-scoring opportunities disappear when he goes to the Bulldogs next year. But yeah, I think the thing that impressed me the most in this game was actually the Dragons. They had that a man down, and they still managed to score tries. They scored 4 tries against the Storm with a man off, and I think Bellamy would be throwing everything in his room. That his Storm, who have such a good defense, let the Dragons score like that. I think it was also Ravalava's first hat trick of his career as well, which was good to see. But what do you think? It was kind of a game that we knew the result before it happened. But yeah.
What wasn't surprised with the result or the margin. Like you, I thought the sending off was perfectly fair. He's contacted him to the head and taken him out of the game. And by what the NRL has said, that's a send off. And I've seen a bunch of pundits arguing that, and Freddie Fittler in particular was talking about, you can't take your Tedesco's out of the game. We can't have that. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Pappenhausen for me. If you're taking a player out of the game by contacting him shoulder to the head, that's fair enough. Send him off. I just think now after this game, the Dragons are going to struggle because I think they're missing Ravalawa, and like you said, he's such a threat for them. They're missing a bunch now. That they're one of the teams that really were affected by this ref crackdown, and they're going to be missing a few players.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number, but it's like 4 or 5 players that are potentially suspended from this game. Which, the Dragons, I've predicted they're still nowhere near where I predicted them to be, but I think we're going to start seeing them slide out of the 8. The teams below them are starting to pick up some momentum, and I just don't see the Dragons surviving with all these key players out.
Yeah, I will say, with Pappenhausen going off, they don't. It's not. Yeah, obviously they're missing one of the best players in the league, but then Nico Hines comes on, and what a game he had! He was involved in so many spectacular tries, and he looks like he's got pace, and he links well, he playmakes well. Some of the tries
he's contract too.
He is, I think, and I heard the commentators making a good point. Maybe that game's just bumped his value up. He'll be hard to keep for Melbourne now, given that he will want a starting spot in a spine in some team. And if Pappenhausen's healthy, it's hard to get a fullback spot for him.
I know the Broncos are looking at him. The Broncos are looking at Nico Hines, which I think would be another great addition to their side. I think he is a very talented player. And you forgot the elephant in the room of the Storm performance was also without Harry Grant and Brandon Smith as well. So they were missing those two, and then they lose Pappenhausen in the first 10 minutes, and they still put a cricket score on. So they're just a scary team. Not as scary as the team we're about to talk about, but it's another comprehensive win. They'll just be upset that they let those tries in.
Before we move on from that, did you see the high contact from Kaufusi from the Storm? Kaufusi got away with one, I thought.
He always gets away with them.
Doesn't he? That's what I thought was a bit. It's, you got to have a bit of consistency, and he caught, I can't remember who he caught, but he caught them fair around the jaw with his arm. Yeah. Coming from behind.
I think it happens. I think it depends on who you are. Like, I think sounding very one-eyed, but if it wasn't Mitchell Moses that head-hied Roger, there would have been a sin bin, but because it was Mitchell Moses, he got okay. And Kaufusi he's one that gets punished after the fact. He never gets punished on the field. He'll get punished afterwards when they go to judiciary. But I think he still got in the clear for this one anyway.
I think so.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. It's that thing. They're trying to juggle how this new interpretation of contact of the head is, but they've got to find consistency. It's got to be everyone or no one. They can't just pick and choose. But yeah, that takes us to the last game of the round where the Panthers wiped the floor with the Titans 48-12. This one, I think I was hoping for more fight out of the Titans, but I was really concerned with how they
Fafita.
perform without David Fafita. And yeah, they kind of showed that without David Fafita, they're just the average Titans that we've been used to in years past. The Panthers even lost a man to the bin and still kept scoring tries like they had a full team out there. They're just too good. Herman Sesc got a red card. I think this one was deserved as well. Yeah. He came out of the line fast, hit Brian To'o, and hit him high. In his defense, Brian To'o is not the tallest man, but it was a shocking hit and definitely a red card with these new rules. And the slim chance the Titans had would go on the moment he went off. And Panthers are now 10-0, and I kept saying that a loss is just around the corner for these guys, but I don't know if it is anymore. They're just too good. They've got good defense, great on attack. I think Nathan Cleary's on his way to being one of the best halves ever to play the game. When you think of how much he's done already at his young age, and what he will grow into, he'll be right up there with the superstars that have come before him. And I think the key thing with him as a prop, talking about a half, because I'm very knowledgeable with how a half works, but I think it's his ability to he doesn't overplay his hand. He knows what he needs to do, but he doesn't try to do too much. A bit like what we were saying with the Reece Walsh situation, where they know what to do without going too far. And he's just cool, calm, and collected. And very scary team. And the Titans, if they don't sort their shit out, they won't make the 8. There's too many teams below them when we go over the ladder that can overtake them. What did you think?
Yeah, I was worried for the Titans with no Fafita. They just look like they lack some threat. They still have players like Brimson, but it takes a whole lot of punch out of them. With the Panthers, I see they're the first team to go 10-0 since the Roosters in '96, I think it was. Ironically, their coach Ivan Cleary was playing for them. Their halves are crazy. You already touched on Cleary. I was very happy he did that because I had him on my fantasy team, got something like 288 points. I'll take that. But he just looks like he makes all the right decisions, when to run, when to pass, kicking game on point. And then he's got the perfect foil in Jerome Luai. And they just make everyone around them on their side better. And it's not like they're not good enough to begin with. Look at all the players they got around them. Their whole forward pack's great. Edwards, Staines, To'o, Crichton. There's no weakness.
No, there isn't. So that takes us to our picks. We had everything the same bar one game, which was the Warriors-Eels game, where I backed the Warriors and you besmirched our team by going for the Eels. And you got that right. So you ended up with 7 out of 8 this week, and I was on 6 out of 8. So that gives us a total of, I've got 55 out of 80 to date, and you've got 56 out of 80. So you're bloody back in the lead again. Before we move on to questions, we'll just go over the ladder. So let's see if I get this working. Look at that. We got Penrith at the top still as normal. I think it's basically the same top 4 that it was last week, with Panthers, the Eels, Storm, and Souths. Roosters are still hanging in there at 5th. The Dragons, they'll keep sliding, but they're at 6 right now. Manly bumped up to 7. And the Raiders got themselves back into the 8 with that patchy win. Unfortunately, the Titans, even though they had that heavy loss, they still kept 9th spot, which sees the Warriors go down to 10th. Then Newcastle and Cowboys at 11th and 12th, and I still think that's the cutoff. I think in like the next 2 to 3 weeks, we can reduce that even further, but I think right now Cowboys still have a shot. if they turn things around. But Tigers, Cronulla, Brisbane, and Bulldogs, who sit from 13th to 16th, they're planning for next year already.
Call me biased.
Yeah,
Call me biased. I think we look better than any of those other sides in that bottom 8 there. So hopefully we can, when we're on, hopefully we can find our feet. And when Fanua Blake comes back on, he'll add another dimension to us, and we can jump back in that top 8.
Yeah. So now we'll go into some questions. I see there are a few here. I'm just going to go Gavin's first. So he's saying NRL wants them tackling lower, but will that potentially go to have bigger problems with doing that also? I think we potentially going to see more blowouts because 80% of the NRL players can offload. So if the whole going high was to stop people offloading. So if everyone starts going low and leaving their arms open to offload, we're just going to see a lot of second phase football, which could result in a lot of one-way traffic games, which I don't think they want to see. I think that would be great for teams like the Warriors because we generally like to offload the ball a little bit. So
yeah. Well, if Gavin's touching on what I think he's touching on, maybe he's talking about another set of dangers of tackling lower, like head on hip, head on knee type thing, and that's definitely a valid point. I think you're shifting the target on the attacker, but for the defender, it makes it a bit more dangerous. Yeah,
that's true too. We could possibly see a lot more concussions from just having your head in the wrong place. The next question we had from Jermaine was, will the Warriors become over-reliant on Reece Walsh like they do with Roger? It seems that these two are on another level and the rest are somewhat spectators. I am always concerned. I'm guilty of it myself. I've already submitted for him to become Prime Minister of the country when he gets here. I want him to be captain. I want them to name the stadium after him. I want it all. But they always do that, though. They before Roger, it was Sean, and before Sean, you had Stacey. There was always like that guy that it was just that player is going to get us out of trouble. It doesn't matter how bad we're playing, how far behind. As long as they do what they do, they'll get us the win. So yeah, I'm hoping that he's going to have enough talented players around him. They've got Adam Fanua Blake, Ben Murdoch, Masilla, some other like legitimate stars that when they're healthy will help him carry the load. So I'm hoping we see it come down a bit, but we won't know until he's actually starting and Roger isn't there.
For my mind, I think for me, I think Roger is the kind of guy who sort of says, jump on my back. I'll show you the way. And he takes a lot of hit-ups, makes some try-saving tackles. He tries to inspire the team with a lot of his individual efforts, whereas Reece Walsh possibly more of a playmaker. Maybe he makes the players around him a bit better. And that's what I'm hoping once we see him fully integrated into the starting side. But who knows?
And we've got a question here from Nigel. Is it time we looked for faster wingers as the game's changed? And would you look at maybe putting Ken in a forward position? I'll let you take this one first.
I don't know if Ken has the work rate for a middle forward and maybe an edge forward, maybe. I don't know. I think all he's sort of ever known in his first grade career is winger. I don't mind so much having a big winger, but I wouldn't mind some contrast and having some pace on the other wing. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the salt and pepper of it. I like having one big, one fast. So I don't mind, like this week you've got Mamalo and Montoya on the wings. I think that's good. I still am campaigning for Adam Pompey to be a winger. I think he's a good combination of both because he is a big winger, but he actually he's got a little bit of quickness too. But yeah, the way the game is, if they could magically find a speedster like the Coates and the Saabs, I think it would be silly not to have them out there. And Ken Potentially, I could put Ken in the forwards if we didn't have the forward pack we have now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's you'd be moving if you're trying to move him into the edge. Are you replacing Ben Murdoch-Masila for him, or Sirinen, Murchie? Katoa can't even get into the lineup at the moment. So, yeah, I think it's not a bad idea to bring him closer in. Just let him do what he's been doing on the edge, more towards the middle of the park. But I don't see him being able to do it at the Warriors just due to the talent they have. And the last question before we go into your one for me is from Simon. It's Reese, where would he like to go after the Warriors? I'm hoping we can try to keep on to him for a little while. But if he can do anything consistently like he's shown in the last few weeks, I think the world's his oyster. I think he could basically go to whatever club he wanted to, if the time was right. I'm just hoping that he remembers the Warriors were the ones that gave him his chance, and he sticks around. I'm pretty sure they'll pay him heavily to stay. But yeah, why are you doing this to me, Simon? I don't like talking about him leaving before.
Yeah, he's only just got here.
He's only just got here. So yeah, I think he's a talent that could go anywhere. So he'll probably end up at the Roosters where everyone goes. So
that or back home at Brisbane, depending on how their fortunes turn around. Gold Coast, maybe. He's a Gold Coast boy.
Yeah. Or he'll just stay here. He'll
stay here.
Hopefully. So before we go into our preview, you've got a question for me anyway. We're running a bit low. I've been told that the soccer show isn't playing tonight, so we can actually go long, which is why we're here over 9 o'clock. But yeah, what's your question for me?
You touched on him just a minute ago, Katoa, Ali Katoa. Given what we saw from him last year, what do you make of his lack of first-grade action so far, Brad? Could he have been given more time to find his form, or is it a fair call from Nathan Brown?
Full disclosure, I am a massive Katoa fan.
Same, yeah.
I love him to bits, and I think his first year with the Warriors was outstanding. The first couple of rounds, he was quite quiet and wasn't playing at that same level. And what Brown did, he just sent him to reserve grade to play footy. And like in an interview I saw with him, he said that the Queensland Cup is still a good competition, but it's slower than the NRL. So for a guy like Katoa, who is legitimately learning the game still, it's a better place to learn. He keeps getting on the cusp of coming back in each week. So, and from what the limited stuff I've been able to see from the Dolphins, he's been playing really well for them too. So he's at least taken it in a stride. I don't want to go too far down the line, but there's generally been players that once they've been dropped, they immediately ask for a release to go somewhere else. He hasn't done that. He's learning the game, and his time will come again. He's just got to keep learning everything he can. And I think I'll talk about Walsh again because that's all we do now. This is the Walsh show. So I think if they're out there together, I think Walsh will do very much what Cody was doing last year, where Cody was getting Katoa into scoring opportunities. So I think he just needs a bit of that. His combination with Chanel wasn't really working, like the one he had with Cody last year. But it's not like his career is over or anything. He's just very young and learning the game.
Nigel's brought up a good point there. He said, wasn't he brought into the leadership group this year? Seems strange they put him up there but can't make the 17.
It's he's on the outskirts of the leadership. He's like in the young development. So they've got the leadership group and they've brought him in because they see a lot of potential. So he gets to do the stuff with the leadership guys, but not actually be in the leadership team. It's just more learning. Brown's trying to get him to learn everything he can. But yeah, I had him in my 17 before the season started. I'd probably still have him in there now as well. It's just, yeah, it's hard when you got so many second rowers. Like Josh Curran, when he came out, he didn't deserve to be dropped either. And you can only pick 17 guys, so yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, before we go into the preview, Simon's brought it up as well. The North American Rugby League competition that we talked about a few weeks ago, it's been postponed, at least for the Western Conference, due to COVID stuff, and they couldn't really find a way to safely do it. The Eastern Conference and the Canadian teams should still be able to play, like Simon said, this year, but the actual whole competition won't get to start again until next year. So that's a bit disappointing.
Yeah.
There's Peter Godinay is signed with the Atlanta team. So it's good to see some players that we've known before going over there and getting a new chance at playing some football. So hopefully there's some more good players out there that will get that opportunity, because I think if they can tap into that American market, it will do great things for rugby league on a whole. And they always seem to love watching the big hits and stuff. They think they're crazy for what they do. So I think they could really bite into it. We just got to see how it goes. But I've been keeping an eye on it to see what more news I can get. So hopefully I'll have more on that for you next week, Simon. So we may as well go straight into our picks. Richie, I'll just bring up the fixtures. So we've got the fixtures there. So the first game of the round, we had the Cowboys versus the Knights on Thursday night. I've gone with the Cowboys. I think the Pongalist Knights are still going to struggle.
Yep, same here, and exact same reason. No Ponga, no Pierce. Takes a lot of sting out of that side.
Yeah. And then first game on Friday, we're back on Friday nights, which I'm actually enjoying. I hated Warriors games being on a Sunday, but the Warriors are playing the Tigers. I'll pick the Warriors here. Like we talked earlier, the Tigers are kind of one of those teams that could come out here and wipe the floor with them. But I'm thinking the Warriors are going to have the edge, especially with a top 8 spot on the line.
Yeah, 2 yo-yo teams. And we had our down this weekend just gone. Tigers had their up, so I'm hoping the yo-yo swings the other way. So go on, Warriors. I think we should beat them, surely. Should
do. Then the last game on Friday is the Sharks versus Dragons. I've gone with the Sharks here. I think the Sharks, they should hopefully get Sean Johnson back. He's named on the extended bench. And the Dragons have most of their team out suspended, so it's very a one-sided affair. So I think the Sharks should get this win.
Yeah, I've gone Sharks. The Dragons just missing a few too many key players there, I think. And yeah, Sharks. Let's go Sharks.
Yeah. And then the first game on Saturday, we've got the Titans versus Bulldogs. Without Fafita, the Titans don't look great, but they should still beat the Bulldogs. So I've gone with Titans here.
That is a leveler, though, Fafita being gone. You know, I mean, Bulldogs, if they show up and show some heart, may not be a blowout to the Titans. It could be a tight game, but I'll give it to Titans home ground, edging them over the line.
Yeah, and then the second game on Saturday is the Roosters versus Broncos. I think Broncos just look poor, and Roosters still keep plugging away. So,
yeah, Roosters for me too. They generally go pretty good guns at Sydney Cricket Ground. So, and yeah, Broncos off the back of a 50-point hiding. They'll do some soul searching this week, but I still think Roosters.
Yeah, and the first game. Or the last game on Saturday, sorry, got Raiders Storm. I think it's pretty clean cut Storm win here.
I think as long as the Storm are anywhere within 20 points of the Raiders at halftime, even if the Raiders have a 20-point lead at halftime, the Storm will get them. The Raiders look poor. Storm are looking fantastic. Should be one-sided.
Yep. And then the first game on Sunday, we got the Rabbitohs Panthers. It's probably match of the round, I'd say, depending on which Rabbitohs teams show up. But I think it's Panthers go to 11-0 here.
Yeah. You're exactly right. Depends which Rabbitohs turn up. Panthers just too hard to tip against, though, at the moment. So, yeah, Panthers.
Yeah. And then for the last game of the round, we've got the Eels versus the Seagulls.
This was a tough one for me. This one's tough.
It was tough. I've gone with the Seagulls. I think the Eels showed that they can be beaten and how they performed against the Warriors. And I think as long as Tommy Turbo comes out and does what he does, they should be able to get the job here. But yeah, it's going to be tight.
Yeah. Eels play well at Bankwest too. In saying that, I went at Sea Eagles. I think their form's been too good at the moment. I can see them pulling off an upset there.
Yeah. And Simon's picks, he's picked the Knights by 6, Warriors by 4, Dragons by 10, Titans by 6, Roosters by 14, Storm by 12, Panthers by 20, and Eels by 14. So a few differences from us there. We'll see who's right at the end of it. So that means we've got the same picks again. So you'll still be in the lead. I think there's some good matchups next round, which we could probably differ on. But yeah, we'll see. But that's all we have for tonight. We're running a bit late, so I'll leave some Super League stuff for next week. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for tuning in and joining us on the Standoff with Brad and Richie. For your weekly update on rugby league, tune into our show next week at 8 p.m. Here on Facebook or at your convenience on iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. Cheers for joining me again, Richie, and good night, everyone.
Night.